Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I want this to be more of an educational video. I'm going to show you a tweet, but please don't go hound this person. I have removed the name of the person. Don't try to find it and try to hound the person. This is not the point of the video. The tweet says, "My rig is $13,000 and will break your arms if you have no idea how to use it. I use it for training for real life racing. I'm not on a G29 like 80% of the community. I take this seriously." If you think the tweet is bad, it does get worse, but I'm not going to show that because I just want this tweet in this video to start a bit of a conversation. This, once again, is not about the tweet itself. This is not to expose the person or try to put this person down. It's about talking about this sentiment that you need to spend a lot of money to be serious in sim racing or to enjoy sim racing or something like that. I spent a lot of time in the last 7 years or so trying to bring all types of review videos and guide videos like the Budget Buyer's Guide that includes all types of equipment from very low end to a little more high end so that everybody can feel welcome into sim racing. All sorts of videos that also include tips, where to race on, if you want to do competitive, if you just want to be a little more casual. And lately I've been having a lot of fun doing shorts in YouTube and Instagram with, "Did you know that in sim racing?" These shorts kind of interesting because it's a new way to connect to other types of people. And I've really started these shorts with the idea as well that everyone can be welcomed in sim racing. I've even included one video, and I truly believe this, that there's really no point trying to put people down that don't have the means to access sim racing equipment or can only drive on a PlayStation or only want to drive on a PlayStation. There's really no need to put these people down because they are also entitled to have fun and learn about the hobby. We have to remember the explosion that we are seeing in sim racing, not only in terms of numbers, but in terms of technologies, in terms of simulators. Simulators have been so good lately in terms of equipment. It's actually really, really recent. It only started past 2020. It really started picking up a lot of pace in 2021 with the Fanatec releasing the CSLDD line. That basically lowered the cost of acquisition of very decent equipment, because prior to 2020 or 2019, you have to remember that most drivers would be still driving on T300s, G29s, G27s, G25s. Everybody that had direct drives had the direct drives for not so long because they would have to build the kits. SimiCube didn't really have such an offering back then. The equipment was so much more scarce, and in terms of sims, it also wasn't as diverse as it is now. What I find ironic about this tweet that I've shown you is that the G29, when it was released, it was actually a pretty good wheel. And if you remove yourself from that time that was launched to the time where G27s and G25s were actually really popular and abundant, they were like that because there weren't many choices in between a G25 and whatever else was on top. Now we have plentiful choices. Everybody is more knowledgeable about the space as well. And a G25 was even considered by a lot of people as more of a high-end approach. I remember when starting doing sim racing, my first wheel was a Cytec R330 or something like that, and I looked at the G25 as something that was definitely more high-end because it had better pedals, because it had a shifter, because it had the force feedback, and it was basically all the rage back then. We also have to remember that the sim racing community is built not on the back of direct drives like the one I have there, like the ones that I have there stored. It's actually built on the back of people driving these Logitech G wheels, these Thrustmasters, and now more and more with the lower end direct drives, because this is where most people will sit themselves for the longest time. It's also a target for a lot of people trying to get into sim racing. Oh, I have a very entry-level wheel. I want to get a entry-level direct drive because it's all I can afford. The community is centering most in themselves in these wheels, and also it's centering themselves in titles that are not iRacing, that are not in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but are Assetto Corsa and Gran Turismo 7, believe it or not, Forza. a lot of people start their sim racing careers not in iRacing. They started on Forza Horizons. They started in Gran Turismos. When I was doing esports back in 2003, this was a long time ago. There was a running gag, and there's the same running gag on other types of industries and other types of areas where it doesn't matter how good you think you are, there's always this Asian kid that does it better than you. And that is essentially the same thing with sim racing, but it's not the Asian kid now. It's a user with a Logitech G29, G25, a Trustmaster T300s. What it matters is that this is actually the truth, and it happens a lot in sim racing. For example, Ty Majeski, he's a NASCAR truck driver, and, he has to put 10,000 I rating, and he races on a Logitech G27. And this is also the truth with some people that I know. They are either using G wheels or Trustmaster T300s, or they started like that and they were already plenty fast, and then they went to somewhere else, to another type of direct drive or something like that. So it's more the case that it's not really about the performance. You can probably extract a little more performance out of sim racing wheels, definitely on pedals whenever you can, but it's mostly about training. It's mostly about persistence, trying to figure out what is best for you and try to extract the most amount of performance with what you have. I think the message on a tweet of, I've spent this money, therefore I'm serious, and you have this wheelbase, and therefore you're not, it talks about of a wider attitude that I'm seeing more and more often in sim racing of my tribe is always right. If I have this, therefore I'm always right, and you are on the other brand are not. Only my sim racing title does it right. Everything else does it all wrong. And it's a type of attitude I find it specifically funny, because while I do understand when, Forza, Gran Turismo, or PlayStation versus Xbox, or Call of Duty versus Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six, I kind of understand it. It will be very normal to happen because, you have big tribes fighting against each other. It's just normal. But in sim racing, we're basically 50 people driving this. It's likely that some of the sims that a lot of people criticize, or some of the games that a lot of people criticize, like Formula 1 and Gran Turismo and Forza, have more people playing them one by itself than most sims combined at any given time. So that tells you that the attitude of the hardcore sim racer is kind of for me underserved, because nobody really cares about it. And the funny part is that sim racing titles and simcades, they have so much more in common than Call of Duty could ever have with Counter-Strike. They cater to different types of people that have different types of necessities, or they just want to do something else. But they're generally decent enough titles to understand, okay, this is more or less relatable to real life. It does a little bit different some things. But ultimately, for me, going for a sim racing title or a wheelbase, it's mostly about necessity. It's mostly about what you're trying to extract from it. It's not an extension of your personality or your narcissism or an ego. It's really not deserving of that. So my point is, there's really no reason to try to push these people down. Drivers of G29s or Gran Turismos saying that they are not serious. Only I, that have spent so much money in sim racing, is serious, when a lot of these people will be the future champions of sim racing. So let's not create an environment that essentially pushes people away of trying sim racing.